Hello and welcome to the Michael Mamas Show. I'm your host, Michael Mamas, and we're coming to you from Mount Soma, home of the Sri Someshwara Temple in the mountains of western North Carolina. I moved my office, as you can see, and come springtime, I think we're going to move outside a little bit. There's some things I'd like to show you the temple and show you around Mount Soma a little bit. And I'm also thinking about when we're outside demoing a few different things, but we'll get to that in future podcasts. But today's subject is Rudra, and the distinction between Rudra and Shiva, which a lot of people don't know about, and I think it's really important information, I think. But before we get to that, I'd like to really encourage everybody, and I know a lot of people don't want to do this because it's such a downer, but I'd like to encourage everybody to watch the news. It's important to just know what's going on in the world. And in these podcasts, more than I originally intended, to be honest, we are talking about current events and trying to give at least the highlights. But there's so much going on right now, and it's all so important. It's such crucial stuff. But then again, I don't want to get caught up in the weeds of the whole thing, which really much of the news is, So those of you who've been listening know I like to take a step back and kind of look at the big picture, what's really going on if you get out of the weeds and see from more of a expanded context, a broader perspective, a Vedic perspective, really, what's really happening. And certainly in that context, it's certainly encouraging, particularly when you consider, the Vedic technologies and the way we can turn all the difficulties and challenges around dramatically and really quite effortlessly. Whereas we continue to roll around in the weeds, if you can recall that story, Brer Rabbit and the Tar Baby, the more he rolled around in the weeds, the more he got tangled with the Tar Baby. Okay. So anyway, I would encourage you to watch the news. I make a point of it, and I monitor the news in India, both what I can get online and also from people I know who are from India or in India who keep me abreast of what's going on there. Also, people I know who monitor the news in France, French-speaking people that keep me abreast of that. In different radio news publications in the U.S. I listened a little bit, but ever since DirecTV kicked Newsmax off the air, I've been watching Newsmax a lot more than I used to. And if you go to YouTube and type in Newsmax, I think it's online or something like that, just type in Newsmax and it comes right up. And they stream live Newsmax TV all day long, and you can rewind and view hours of it and fast forward and whatever you want. And I'll kind of do that and fast forward to what their perspective on different things. But the perspectives vary so much. I mean, who's telling the truth, And so when you watch things, instead of, hanging your hat on one broadcaster, be it, CNN or NBC or MSNBC or Greg Kelly on Newsmax or Tucker Carlson on Fox News or any number of these different things. Listen and try to be discerning and see what makes sense. And I think it's really important these days.
Michael?
Yeah.
There's oddly enough, there was a thing yesterday that I was showing my youngest son Dries that came up just on one of the reels they call them reels now on these um, little apps or like Instagram or something, right?
What's a reel?
A reel is like a little short video.
I see. I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it says, uh, careful of judging before you've seen the whole picture. And
Mm.
so it shows this guy running at the camera, and you just see him running. And first, it looks like he's running at a lady, and then they change the angle, and they show it again, and he's running past the lady towards this guy. And then they change the angle again, and they show it from this that shows the guy and just run past the lady towards the guy. The guy's freaking out, looking at him like he's running at him to attack him.
Yeah.
Then they
Yeah.
show it from above where it shows the guy running past the lady towards the guy who's freaking out, doesn't see that there's about a ton of bricks that's about ready to fall on it. And the guy is tackling him to get him out of the way of the
Yeah.
bricks.
There you go. It's all perspective, really. And who you going to listen to? And by the way, another source of the news that I pay a lot of attention to, one of them is you, Scotty. I mean, you get your news, I guess, primarily on the internet, or I know you talk to different people. And there's also another source I have that will go unnamed because I don't know, they like to remain confidential, and I respect that. But they're well connected, kind of in the underworld, not underworld, but in the DC crowd, and there are different groups like that. There's an MD I know who's well connected, and what the scuttlebutt is among MDs versus what they're willing to say in public are two different things because they don't want to lose their license. Anyway, pay attention. That's all. That's all. And all right, so enough on that, I think. I'll say one more thing, and that is that the age of cover-ups is coming to an end. And that's because of just what you said, Scotty. There's so much out there now that people can't just, the news, be it the government or the media or whatever, can't just show one perspective and convince people that's the only truth. Cover-ups they're painfully coming to realize, slowly and painfully coming to realize that the age of cover-ups is coming to an end, and that's a good thing in the long run, it will all shake out, Okay, so what's the big picture here with respect to Vedic technology and the dawning of the golden age? There's Shiva. Shiva is like the silent absolute, the pure absolute, the unbounded absolute, that depth of the transcendental value, the Chaitanya, if you will, value, the Christ in Christianity, pure, unbounded perfection, as pure as white as fresh fallen snow, That's why Shiva is associated, in fact, with the mountains and with white and with snow, purity like that. Now, there's another aspect of Shiva, which is when Shiva, that pure value, that purity value, that perfection that dwells within the absolute, when that wells up into relativity, and when it wells up into the field of imperfection, if you will, the field of identity with other, the identity with relative, the identity with, Scotty, you were just talking about, perspective and limited perspective. And when it does that, see, limited perspective creates distortion. And so when Shiva wells up into relativity, then that distortion is destroyed. It's confronted. It's purified out. And that's why they call him Shiva the Destroyer. I've heard some people that they're afraid, Shiva the Destroyer, that sounds terrible. No. It's the purifier. He destroys ignorance. He destroys imperfection. He destroys ill health. He destroys imbalance. He destroys impurity. And that quality of Shiva, that's now Rudra. And Rudra, when viewed from the perspective of identity with negativity, is the terrible one, you see? And so what's done, and it's very commonly done in Shiva temples, and it's done every day at the Sri Someshwara temple. It's going on right now, in fact, at the Shiva temple at Mount Summit, the Sri Someshwara temple. It's a ceremony called the Rudra Abhishek, Sri Rudram. And it's a ceremony that enlivens that Shiva value to permeate up through relativity and purify relativity. There are places in India, well, many Shiva temples, but there's one place in particular in India where tons of pundits, I don't know how many thousand, I'll say maybe not that many, maybe more, I don't know, all together every day are doing this Rudra Abhishek to purify the environment for the whole world. And then there's these technologies called Vastu, Vedic architecture, where then what happens is that these ceremonies can be performed in a structure that's kind of like an amplifier, where that value resonates even more, so that the power becomes even greater and can radiate out. And the Vedic literature says, the ancient literature, it's in the ancient Vedic literature, it says that then that value is so powerful that it can purify an entire continent. And that's what Mount Summit is about. From a Christian perspective, it takes that Christ value and radiates it out to heal the whole planet, the entire continent. 6 continents, there 6 enlightened cities, they're called, is sufficient to purify the whole world. The Christ value, the Shiva value will radiate out through the entire planet, you see? Okay, so that's what we're all about. Some nice quotes that I saw, and they're printed in the blog that's associated with this podcast, but I liked them. It says, experience is a hard teacher because it gives the test first and the lesson afterwards. Boy, isn't that the truth, you know? And the other part of it is the test is given, and then you have to try to figure out the lesson. And oftentimes we don't. And then sometimes we don't even need to, you know. It's kind of like, I remember one saint in India said, why try to sift through all the garbage, you know? When you have garbage in your garbage can, sometimes it's best to just take it and dump it in the trash. We don't bother, you know, sifting through it all, you know. Mark Twain has a lot of great quotes. He said, a man's character may be learned from the adjectives which he habitually uses in conversation. That's an interesting quote, really, because it speaks to the power of speech. You know, even the sounds of the Vedic cognition, those syllables, those sounds. It's the association of name and form, the power of a pure language, that every syllable, every word has a power that carries the meaning of the word, you see? And so when words are used that are out of harmony with nature, they radiate that value, not just through the environment, but in the physiology of the people. So we do well to watch our language. I know that Maharishi Mahesh Yogi said that a significant percentage, it was a large percentage, I can't remember offhand just exactly what that was, but a significant percentage of your spiritual evolution is determined by the quality of your speech. So it's something to, you know, keep in mind. I don't know if you're associated with that Ansley University. It's a university, I think, in Kentucky. Do you know about that, Scotty?
No.
Oh, they're doing this, you know, it's a typical, you know, Christian revival where they're all, you know, holding out their hands and feeling the power of Christ and all that. And it's a big, huge auditorium filled with people, and it just started spontaneously. And it was going 24/7. I don't know, it might still be going on, but it was going on for at least a week, I think, and even over a week. And I know where I learned about it was Tucker Carlson, and they wanted to go there with the news team. He thought it was, a wonderful thing. And people were wanting to come from all over, and it just got to be almost too big a thing. And they wouldn't allow Tucker Carlson. And they said, this is a spiritual thing, and they don't want to turn it into some sort of a news type thing. I respected that. So did he. And it was powerful. But, my thought on it was, that spoke to the power of group consciousness. And group consciousness can lead humanity in a very constructive and beautiful direction. It can also, if the group consciousness is, malevolent, it can lead humanity into a very negative and very destructive direction. But my real deeper thought about it was, can you imagine the power of group consciousness if it's done in a manner that is consistent with Vedic technology? Now, technology oftentimes can be thought of as technology that's kind of a sterile scientific thing, but I'm using the word technology here in a more expanded sense. Technology meaning in a manner that is consistent with the very structure and nature of the dynamics of nature itself, Mother Nature, the unified field, the physics, if you will, of the unified field. Oftentimes, who was it that, it was Abraham Lincoln. It was somebody said, well, we're going to win the Civil War because God's on our side. And Abraham Lincoln said, I'm more concerned about being on God's side than getting him on our side. And it's like that. We do well to worship in a manner that's not consistent with what we think God would think, but in a manner that is consistent with what God thinks. And Vedic cognitions, the point of Vedic cognitions is that they were sourced from Veda. Cognition means impulses of the creative intelligence that were birthed right out of nature itself. So the very word cognition can't be taken too lightly. It's a very profound meaning. But just, that gets off on a deep tangent, and just what's going on at that university, just on face value, it's a beautiful thing. But, I was driving in a truck. We had to go do a pickup for Mount Soma, and I was going with Brian, who was like the site foreman here at Mount Soma. And oftentimes we drive by these churches or whatever, and there's quotes outside. Here we were driving by the freeway, and there was a sign off the freeway. And you'll see lots of Christian signs here, off the freeway and stuff. This particular one said, Jesus saves. And so when Brian and I drive along, I oftentimes we get on the subject of my teachings and that, and they acknowledge in that. And I said, from the perspective of what I teach, Brian, what do you think Jesus saves mean? And he wanted me to just say, what does Jesus saves mean from the Vedic perspective? And I said, well, what Jesus saves mean is that Jesus is one with the unified field. He's the embodiment of that. He is the Christ, you see? And so what happens is that Christ value is that purity, that source of the infinite purity, harmony, intelligence, wisdom that birthed the whole universe and sustains the whole universe. And so if we align our being, our physiology with that, our awareness with that, then our entire health is revived, our psyche is revived, our lives are revived. We are saved. That's what that means. And it's not unlike an analogy, very direct analogy, and it is like when you cut yourself, it heals. Why? Because the physiology is sourced from that same unified field. So it's the unified field that heals. It's, if you will, the Christ does the healing there. It's called homeostasis in medicine, And so Jesus saves, you see, and that's everywhere. And it's just up to us, to keep the wound clean or like that. It's not the doctor that heals. It's the self-correcting mechanism inherent in the nature of the whole thing that heals. And if we can just facilitate that process, as is done with the Rudra shake, for example, in the Vedic temple, or in an enlightened city, and even a more powerful facilitation when the Rudra shake is done in a whole structure that resonates and amplifies that, you see, that we can accomplish purification and health and awakening of the golden age for the whole planet. You see? Anything else on that, Scotty?
Well, it's the same thing with some of the other sayings too. The only way to God is through Christ, right? You hear those sayings,
Yeah, and
along the same lines, right?
and in a way, it's a redundancy to say the only thing to God is through Christ, because the Christ is one with God, and so in a way, maybe I'm playing with words here too much, or but yeah, I mean, you're right. I'm just kind of going
Right.
off on a tangent there, Scotty.
No. Yeah, I'm just. It's like there's like it's the roads to Rome. Him saying that is just a different way of saying the same thing of you were aligning yourself. That's the way
That's right.
to get to God. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the same thing, really.
Yeah.
No, you're right. You're right. I got off on a tangent there. Forgive me.
No, I just
Yeah. Oh, here's another thing. Experts. This whole thing with the what was the name of that town in Ohio that had the big spill, and all the people, and they burn it off, and all the people are getting poisoned, and then the experts from the EPA and all say, "Oh no, it's fine to drink the water," and all.
Yeah.
Made me think of that. What was that? Clint Eastwood, Outlaw Josie Wales, I think it was, where the Indian guy that kind of became his sidekick. He was a pretty cool guy, but some snake oil salesman tried to get him to buy some snake oil, and the Indian guy said back to him, "What's in it?" And the guy said, "Well, a bunch of different stuff," and he just said, "You drink it."
Yeah.
That's what I felt like they should. So they said that to the EPA people. So what do? They go into someone's house and drink one glass. Big deal. It's, would you bathe your kids in it? Would you give it to them to drink? Would you live? And it's just such a shame. So here's the thing I want to say, though, about experts. Experts know lots and lots of facts. But the key about knowing all the different facts is how much importance you put on each of the little different facts, the minuscule little facts. It's a question of how much weight you put on each fact, how much you weight them. And if you overweight this little fact or that little minuscule fact, you can justify almost anything. And so experts, by knowing too many little minuscule little facts, they go way out on the limb, and they overemphasize some little distant limb and throw the whole thing out of balance. And then they tell you what they think because they're the expert. Whereas what they really need to do is go back closer to the trunk in an arena which we call common sense. So the experts, just like with the whole COVID thing, and now with this train wreck, no pun, no, great pun. I didn't intend it, but it's a great pun. With this train wreck in Ohio, the experts have just gone so out of balance, and they're so out of touch, and they can justify whatever they want. So when the experts stop making common sense, it's time to take a step back. I'm so disgusted with experts. And it's the same in Jyotish, Vedic astrology. The real artistry of Vedic astrology isn't just knowing all the different variables and all the different factors and things, which is great. But the real strength is knowing how much weight to put on each of these different variables. And so many supposed experts in Jyotish are not very good at that. Anyway,
It's contained in the awareness.
say that again.
It's contained in the awareness
That's
of
that's
the.
that's exactly right. It's a function. Knowledge is structured in consciousness. It's contained in the awareness of the individual. Knowledge is not about how many facts you know, but it's your ability to discern, which is a function of your level of awareness. And I remember one guy once said, well, I have discernment. I've been meditating 10 years, so I have discernment. And I just thought to myself, oh, brother, human evolution, discernment, these things aren't measured in how many years or even how many decades you've been meditating. It's a human evolution is a process that can be measured in lifetimes. And we don't know how evolved we are
Yeah.
based on, lifetimes. So humility is the flip side of wisdom. Oh boy.
Michael,
Yeah.
I heard something the other day about somebody's talking about how evolved we are as a species, but they're like, can you imagine if this species has been wiped out like several times over the last few billions of years, right?
Millennia, yeah.
Started over, and there's other civilizations out there that have been evolved for billions of years. We could be just a blink of the eye.
In the big picture, modern civilization and what's recognized as history has no idea. Has no idea. And even in the context of what civilizations are out there in the universe, what's recognized, we have no idea. There's also an important thing. Where did I hear this? Oh yeah, we're running an organization. There are always reasons you have to talk to an attorney to get things structured with the county or what have you. So we were talking to an attorney, and after we finished, he just kind of waxed philosophical a little bit, just tangentially, and he was saying he's an attorney, and he was saying so. Admittedly, he really shouldn't be thinking this way or talking this way, but he said he has a real problem with the jury system and with democracy, and he said because they're smart, and he said there are a good number of people out there that are smart. But there's also crazy. And he said a lot of smart people are crazy. And I think when you hear it, you think about it, yeah, a lot of smart people are crazy. And then he said at the same time, there are a lot of people that are not smart. In fact, they're stupid. And they're also crazy. And so what does that say about the jury system and democracy? So I don't know. He said it. I thought it was a comment worth repeating, and I'm just sharing it with you for what it's worth. The problem is very few people think they're stupid. And even fewer people, I think they're crazy. And I don't think very many people think they're stupid and crazy. And now it gets me thinking, what was that Lincoln quote? You can fool some of the people all the time, and all the people some of the time. You can't fool all the people all the time. Anyway, equity in action. I don't know if you know about this. Airline pilots now, they're not, and across the board. In fact, the federal government now is, I think I talked about this in a previous podcast, but they are creating a board run by, what's her name? Susan Rice, I guess, under Barack Obama, examining all the different departments and divisions and everything in the federal government, making sure that they have the proper number of different minority groups. And they're forcing it upon them. And even in the corporate America, that's happening. And so they're hiring airline pilots, not because they're the best qualified, but because they're the proper minority group. And so there's this guy that FedEx, I guess it was, hired. I may have that wrong. I don't think I do. He was right. As an airline pilot. And in training, he was so terrible that they made him go through the training again. But it was equity. They kept him hired. And he flew a plane, he crashed the thing, killed people. More people will die because of the whole equity thing. And equity is going on across the board. And now, when getting back to this disaster train wreck in Ohio, one place I saw in the news that the brakes, there are plenty of, they talk about the infrastructure being the problem. Oh, the infrastructure. And their infrastructure might be a problem, but there was this one place where they have these multiple warning systems where it says, and in this case, warning system after warning system was going off saying the brakes are overheating. Warning, warning. The braking system is overheating. Warning, warning. The braking system is overheating. Just ignored until the brakes went out and the train derailed. I would like to know whose job it was to monitor those warnings and to tell the conductor or whatever to slow down, the engineer to slow the train down.
Well, there's something else on that, Michael. That
good. Let's hear it because I haven't heard.
I guess since a lot of the railroads have gone to being publicly traded corporations, they're trying to maximize profit or something. This is one thing that I heard that could address that they've had to cut down the amount of people because they're not, they're trying to maximize profit. So there wasn't the guy that was there watching the brake warning signs going off. There's not enough people.
Not enough people.
Yeah.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
But also, I think, the infrastructure is bad. We haven't, spent the money that we've needed to upgrade it. But I think it's a multivariable that, But you see, there you go. I mean, I agree with the whole, don't get me wrong, I agree about the infrastructure needing to be improved. But in this particular case, the warning system was there, but they weren't paying attention. There weren't enough people to monitor it. Okay. Yeah.
Just horrible. The whole thing is a mess,
Yeah.
Across the board, everything is a mess. But the good news is that across the board, it could all be healed. And we have the technology. It's not that hard, but people won't listen. How did I put it in the little blurb that goes along with the blog? It's called Ancient Wisdom, but to Vedic scholars, it's not just ancient, but nobody's listening. The Vedic scholars know about Vedic technology. The literature that we know the Vedic scholar in South India, and he's given us the plans how to build an enlightened city to straighten this whole thing out. But nobody's funding it. Nobody's interested. Nobody believes any of this stuff. Why? Because it's not a function of their current limited paradigm. And that's a history of humanity. Cheesy peasy, man. All right. So there's more here. Let's see. We need competent, pragmatic leadership. Fiscal responsibility. The Federal Reserve's got to get straightened out. More and more trade is being done in not in US dollars. I don't think many people even understand how serious a problem that is. The world is salvageable, but the direction it's moving has to change. People have to wake up. We can't have stupid and crazy people running the world, and that's what's happening. It's unbelievable.
Well, that goes, Mike. That goes back to the what you're talking about, like the people running this place. it's a popularity contest right now, or somewhat of a
I
popularity.
don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Is it a
Well, who knows?
popularity contest or is it a control contest? If this
It could,
person is stupid enough and crazy enough to let you tell them what to do, and you have ulterior motives that have nothing to do with the well-being of the people, then that's who you're going to manipulate the people to make president, or what?
it's like we need to have a competition almost where you put these people through, like you were talking about with the FedEx pilot. They said, hey, no, this guy's wrong, for the job because he's not doing the right things. Have these people go through and say, okay, what happens if this? What happens if that? What do you do? It's like there's got to be some better method.
Yeah, well, good luck.
Yeah.
Equity reigns right now.
Yeah.
Jeez. It'll get straightened out. And I have a very simple question. Why does the CDC, Center for Disease Control, why do they refuse to release the results of the studies on the vaccine's effectiveness and its side effects? Very
Pfizer.
simple question.
It's Pfizer. It's why.
Yeah, we know why. Okay. WHO, World Health Organization. Do you realize that tomorrow, Monday, in that week, President Biden is planning to sign an agreement, and the UN has it all set up so that all it requires is President Biden's approval. It doesn't have to go through the Senate or any of that, which is ridiculous. And then the World Health Organization, which is in bed with the CCP, the Communist Party of China, the communist government, has full control of pandemics in all nations, including the United States, so that they can declare and then they can apply it to this nation or that nation at will. It doesn't have to be across the board. All regulations regarding pandemics. So if they want to close down all businesses because there's a pandemic, another virus, or what have you, climate control, any kind of pandemic, anything they deem as a pandemic, they can do it. Shut down schools, they can do it. Mandate vaccines, they can do it. And we have nothing to say about it. It's frightening. They can control the nation. And they would also decide, by the way, what is information and what is disinformation. And they would disallow what they deem to be disinformation. And that goes into effect, potentially tomorrow. I don't think it'll hold up. I think eventually Congress and the Senate will fight it. But my goodness, I hope so. But you see the stuff that the Senate and Congress has supported. And I was really happy with the, what's his name, the new Speaker of the House. But I saw him, that woman that got shot when they were, what is it, January 6th, and they entered the Congress, and then that one security guy shot, what's her name, Babbitt, and killed her. And the Speaker of the House recently made the comment that he did the right thing. His credibility right there with me is shot. How could he possibly say that? How could he possibly say that? It was murder. Anyway, all this will get cleared up. The good news is this is all going to get straightened out. Okay, Ukraine. Oh my God. China's licking its chops. China, believe me, right now, China is interested in positioning itself in a manner that will best benefit China in the long run. They'll side with Russia if they think they can get all the natural resources from China that Russia has plentiful amounts of. They will side with Ukraine, and they'll go in and they'll rebuild Ukraine after all this fighting is over, if they think that will benefit them so that they can get all the grain which is huge, plentiful in Ukraine. They'll do whatever they have to do that benefits themselves the most. And if they think it benefits themselves the most, to give all these drones and everything to Russia to just kill all these people in Ukraine so that they can, again, get all the benefit of the natural resources in Russia, they'll do that. The whole thing is nuts. Putin gave a speech and he said some really seething things about the United States. I'm no Putin fan, believe me. But at the same time, he said some things about the United States that are just true, you know. He talked about the rampant perversion of morality, corruption in the West, the loss of cultural integrity, on, and he was completely right about that. A lot of mysterious deaths in government officials who are opposed to the war, in Russian government officials, Russian military leaders, some woman that was in charge of some portion of the military assault in Ukraine, jumped out a window and killed herself. I mean, it's just, oh man. Well, you can read in my podcast if you want. The alliance between Russia and China is horrible. Like it or not, like him or not, Trump did warn about that whole thing, and he turned out to be right. Anyway, there's more there. You can read about it in the blog if you want. And I think I'm done. What else, Scotty?
No, I think that's plenty.
That's plenty. You know, we could do a podcast today. I'm just trying to hit the highlights here. Watch the news if you want more of the details. And for this week, that's all. I appreciate you for listening. And just keep in mind that the good news is on its way. Everything's going to be better than fine. It's going to be great. The golden age is coming. If you've had a hard time the past few months, it's probably because of Mars. It's in Taurus. It's been there a long time. It's causing trouble, but it'll transit out in 2 or 3 weeks. So things should be getting better soon. But for things to really get better, it's going to be a couple of years yet anyway. Okay. Thanks for listening. Talk to you.